This was a really interesting conversation with Craig today. It was interesting to me to think about a young man who has already spent almost half of his life in the military and in the last 2 years has transitioned out. He's a father to three. He is someone who has taken some of the challenges that life presented him, a lot of it connected with mental health and stress. He's he shares openly about what he went through and how that was what got him going on helping other men, especially other dads, with mental health and stress, especially. There's lots of really beautiful information in there that he shares that will help a parent who is raising children, and especially for young men and for dads. So I hope that you have a listen and you enjoy this just as much as I did. Too many boys today feel lost, alone, and misunderstood. Too many parents feel the same. Behind today's troubling statistics is a generation of boys longing to be seen, heard, and valued. And yet the conversation around boys' emotional lives is still far too quiet. This new season of Unlocking the Parenting Code is here to change that. This season, you'll hear more real conversations with young men, more expert voices on boys' mental health, more solo episodes where I share truths I've learned firsthand, and more wisdom from parents walking this road right now. It's time to open our eyes, open our hearts, and become the change our boys need. Boys aren't broken. They're waiting for us to truly see them, hear them, and stand with them. So tune in to Unlocking the Parenting Code for real conversations, real hope, and a new path forward for our boys. It's time. They're ready. Are we? Welcome back to Unlocking the Parenting Code, all about boys. I'm your host, Kathy, and today I am welcoming Craig Maddern. He's a proud dad, Army veteran, and certified stress relief coach whose mission is to help hardworking dads break free from chronic stress and reclaim joy in their families. After 15 years in the military, 2 tours in Afghanistan, and a personal journey through trauma, a pacemaker, and diagnosis with bipolar, this has emerged with hard-earned wisdom and a passion for supporting men to redefine masculinity, resilience, and fatherhood. Welcome to the show, Craig.
Hello, Catherine. Yeah, really looking forward to getting to a conversation about this. As you can imagine, I'm quite passionate about everything we're going to talk about today and helping fathers. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Craig, if someone was meeting you for the first time and wanted to really understand who you are, not just what you do, what would you want them
Mhm.
to know?
I would love them to know pretty quickly that I'm a devoted dad, mainly because it's pretty much where my life evolves around. It's something that took me a while to find out the importance of it. So I would be that's first. I'm very proud to be a dad. It's like I'm a father, I'm a dad, I have kids, I have a wife. So like that's pretty much the spear, the end of the spear for me is like this is who I am. I'm a dad first. So that is who I want people to know me as.
Okay. So, since that's an important part for you, and because your work centers around dads, I thought that might be a good place to start.
Mhm.
So, can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with your dad and growing up, and what kind of messages you got from him about being a man and being a father?
That's a really good question, and I'm actually probably quite unique in the fact that I was brought up by my dad and my mother lived away. So I live in Britain, so I lived in Wales. My mum moved to England. That was through a court case, so it was quite a tricky situation between them, but I was only two. So I was brought up by my dad. He was a lot stricter. It was in the 90s, so he was a lot stricter then. But he did teach me some good life lessons, which was to when to remain strong, why to remain strong, what's the reason then for me staying strong, and sort of gave me some sort of value for the future. But I feel like I've probably taken that in more of a modern side with my kids because I feel like again it was that sort of disconnect of emotion. There was no sort of emotion I got from him, so I did get brought up on that side. There was no emotional sort of side from him, and it was a very old-fashioned, traditional, absolutely, scared to annoy him or do the wrong thing because of what could have happened. So in a way, I'm thankful. Like if I have to admit, for quite while in my life, I probably looked at him only in anger, like how dare you do this to me? How could you have done that to me? And look what you've done. But I don't think I would have been able to get through to the how far I've got without his stern discipline. As much as there could have been more love, the stern discipline definitely got me through the toughest parts of my life.
Yeah, our perspective changes once we become parents too, doesn't it? We see our parents a little bit differently.
Oh, 100%. And at first, I was starting to become stern like my father, and then I realized, well, hold on, that didn't fully work out for me because as much as it worked out in the end, I could have gone down a better route, I feel, for myself. So it was more about how can I take the lessons from my dad, but also take the lessons from what probably didn't go right and implement that with my kids, be more present, be more loving, be more compassionate, and educational for them as well, or educating, should I say.
Okay. Part of your story, and it really quite fascinates me, and I've been doing a little bit of, trying to get more information to understand what it must have been like. So that's what I'd like to hear. You were in the military for 15 years, which means you joined the military at 17.
That's
And
correct, yeah.
that's really quite phenomenal. So what moved you? Like what drove you into that world and what was the experience like for you?
There was a few things that drove me into it. First one, I was quite promiscuous in school, and I probably knew my education wasn't going to be good enough. I wasn't really interested into education until later in my life, where I then become obsessed with it. Secondly, was my father and my grandfather, who my grandfather always believed in me to be the best, and that was the army slogan at the time, was like be the best. So I remember walking in and I gave my dad a leaflet or something, back in the day where it was like not
Yep.
internet wasn't massive, and then I was a leaflet I found in school, and it was like join the army, and it was the steps on how to process. I gave it to him. I remember a day later he came with like these videos and articles, and he just chucked it. He was like, read everything you can. So he really wanted me to because he came from an RAF background, Royal Air Force.
Mhm.
And the third drive for me is just I looked around my town and I looked around at people and listened to people's like aspirations for the future, and I thought I've got more drive and ambition that I want to do something. I want to not just be what did you do for your life? I grew up in one place, I did this, I went around the world and I ventured out and I did things that not many people in the world can say they've done. So, that's what sort of drove me, is like the ambition to become something more than just a guy growing up in South Wales in the UK. It was like I wanted to do more so I could look back and be, happy with what I'm content with what I did. And to probably make my dad proud deep down, I think I'm my granddad and my nan, my
Yeah.
mum.
Yeah. Well, it's quite a bold move. Um,
Yeah,
and so I've
it
got a bunch
was.
of questions after like further down about that. But
Okay.
so when I was thinking about that and trying to really get a picture of what that must have been like, that experience, because those are also critical years for just your stage of development, like who your
Mm,
identity is, what it, all of what is connected with your identity, your masculinity. So there were three things that I had, picked up and I wrote down and I wanted to read them and then I wanted to
yeah.
have your take on some things.
Okay.
Excuse me. So, a qualitative study of UK ex-servicemen found that hegemonic masculinity, emotion suppression, toughness, and identity as a soldier remains deeply embedded, making emotional expression feel inappropriate in the military context.
Mm,
Military culture fosters hyper-masculine ideals like emotional control, self-reliance, and toughness, which can hinder help seeking and worsen mental health outcomes. And some military masculinity norms, like loyalty, mutual protection, and group cohesion, can serve as protective factors, offering emotional and social support in challenging environments.
mm.
So, when you're thinking about your experience and you're thinking about that information, what were some of the unspoken rules about masculinity that you picked up on in the military?
That's a really good question because I don't think, you don't necessarily get around a table and go, right, quickly, let's discuss how we're going to be masculine. I guess it just sort of evolves as you're in the military. So I guess one of them is that, you do have to look quite tough, especially at the beginning years when you're in the training, you're trying to prove that you can be the best. So there is that side and element to it. I guess it's pros and cons. The cons being that you are trying to suppress a lot of your rage and stress and anger to show that you can deal with it because you're trying to prove that you can make it to the next level. That when you promote, for instance, that you can take on extra responsibility, you can look after a lot of people in quite crazy situations, as you can imagine. So yes, there is that side where you suppress quite a lot, but I think you mentioned at the end there about how you sort of have to sort of gather around. And I actually grew probably more empathy in the army than I ever did have when I was growing through it. So at the very early stages, when I was quite a low rank and I just did what I needed to do, I wasn't empathetic. I didn't really care for much other people. I was quite, like I said, promiscuous. I slept around quite a lot at the beginning of my military career because I just didn't see this maturity side growing in me. But as I sort of went up the ranks in the army, then I started to realize that you're looking after these men that are going to be, you know, they look up, not just look up to you, but they're like, "Oh, I need to." I hated the very stern, that no matter what you did, they just completely came down on you like a ton of bricks. I sort of hated that, and I always remember turning to my friend Tom and I said, "I will never be like that. I'm going to be more empathetic, and I'm going to look after the lads. I'm going to give them what they need when they need it the best I can." So actually, the army helped me probably be more empathetic and caring for other people in the world. When you go across the countries and you see things that you can't really explain to the common eye, what other human beings are doing out in the world, not so much in the West, but in the East, you sort of then, it really hits you and you go, wow, look what other people are doing to each other. So you just, don't get me wrong, I still have this. What took me so long and what caused my mental health was because I held so much back because it wasn't about, I forgot to care for myself, I guess is the answer to that. You're not caring about yourself, you're caring about this unit, this squad that you've got. So I think it taught me some great things, like you said then, but I think it also taught me how to bottle up, and sometimes I just need to learn how to vent the correct way.
Yeah. Did you find, like one of the things that I found that a lot of people don't relate to, but we lived in Beirut for 7 years. And during that time, there were numerous assassinations. There was the war
Hmm.
with Israel. There was a Hezbollah uprising. And as frightening and the upheaval, the chaos was something
Mm.
that I was never part of my world before. But the other thing that I really learned from that is just how that uh, bonds you with the other people who are going through it. Like there's an intensity in the relationship just because you're all going through it at the same time. Did you
Yeah.
do you have any experiences? Like, does it feel the same from the military side?
Yeah, every single day. Even if it's, just normal. Towards the end of my career, I started doing more like instructing and teaching. And it's sometimes, well, a lot of the time, especially towards the end, hence the pacemaker in my chest, was a lot of stress and a lot of anger that I held within. So you do just band together, you group together because you're pretty much, the old saying that you're all in the same boat, you're going through the same hell in that case, I guess you can call it that. So yeah, you're 100% right. I did, like I said, it taught me a lot more empathy, but what I was missing out was sort of self growth and development. I wasn't really looking after my own mental health. I was looking after everyone else's, I find, when I look back now. Um, so yeah, it's great for looking outwards, but sometimes in the army you forget to look
Yeah.
inwards.
So when veterans return to civilian life, depression, anxiety, and alcohol misuse are common.
Mm.
About 38% show signs of these struggles. So what was it like when you left the military after 15 years? Because that was almost half of your life.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
what were
all
some
of
of
those
the
things you said.
what are some of the unexpected challenges in that transition from military to civilian life?
So what you just said is what I went through, before even I left the military, the alcohol abuse started, is because I was lost in this loss of identity and stress. But anyway, after the military, when I left, yeah, 100%, depression was quite high because I thought, wait a second, I'm lost in this world that I thought was probably going to be for the best, as I got it into my brain. You're right there. But the unexpected things, I think it's just coming out into more of a modern society. You got to remember when I was a kid at 16, 17, it was 2008. It's I know it sounds crazy, and I'm not saying that when you're in the army you just go away from the real world, but you're not living the real world. A
Yeah.
lot of ex-military probably, sorry, actual serving soldiers will probably hear this and go, well, we get to see the world, mate. We do have social media. We do. It's not that. It's living in it, and some people in the military will have houses and they'll live in a lot of civilian areas and stuff. But I can't explain it. I think it's being in the cog of society again, almost like
Yeah.
you even it's hard to explain, but even though in the military you are living life, you do see a lot what's going on. I felt just I came back to Wales after 15 years, and I just felt everything just felt weird. It just didn't feel right. I felt lost. I felt like I was the outsider, and that at first I just thought you're all wrong. That's what I
Mhm.
thought. I was just like, you. Every time I went into my new jobs, or I was walking down the street and I was just watching, I was like, you're all wrong. And that's all it was in my head. Is that even though, like I said, my empathy grew, it really dropped as more depression I got, and stuff, because I was stonewalling and I was really hiding myself away into dark rooms, like metaphorically. I just thought everyone was wrong. I just thought you're all living weird. What are you all doing out here? It's crazy. You're all like a million miles per hour, and you just like, everything seems to. I found as I was breaking inside, I was looking outwards again and going, how are these people breaking so easy over the littlest of things? Like, oh, we're not
Yeah.
going to get this on time. I'm like, and even to this day, I still feel that sometimes, if I had to be honest. I see some people react and I'm like looking at them going, no idea. But that's something I've had to grow in empathy, but that's like the probably unexpected thing I thought was like just coming out into the world again and just and as because I was a young age, maybe I never really tasted the real world in itself. I was tasting a different world that I don't regret at all. But that was unexpected for me. It was like how much the world changed from when I was 17 to 31. It's like, wow, everybody's really sad. Not sad as it,
Yeah.
I mean, they
Yeah.
look really sad. Everyone's upset. Everyone's angry at each other. I was like, what's going on? I've just come from this, like, yes, we didn't like people in the army, but like you said, we formed that brotherhood, we formed that like bond, and then I came out and everyone hates each other. I was like, why is everyone arguing? Because you've got, whatever it is, it's just everyone seems divided. So it was like a big shock to me, and I think a lot of soldiers will come out of the army and probably feel that as well.
Well, you really came out of one world into another new world because, like, when you're a teenager, when you're growing up, when you're at home, that's not the same as, living a
No.
life in the real world that everyone else is walking through. So
Mm.
I imagine that would have been a huge adjustment on all levels. Like, so yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
knocked me for six. I was in the army March, April, left the army by June. I was in Civvy Street. But even though I was getting paid by the army because it's like a medical transition, so it was a really quick. Like 1 minute I'm in the army, I'm putting my uniform on, I'm going to all these army the events, and then literally 2 months later, I'm living back in Wales in a
Yeah.
civvy job, and I'm like, what's going on? So it was
Yeah.
a massive transition, like really quickly.
So so if your stepson is 18 years old right now.
It's correct, yeah, yeah. He's 18 years old, yeah.
So for him or for your youngest child, if they, when they're 17, 18, if they said to you, I'm going to join the military, what would your response be?
2 years ago, if you asked me the question, I'd have said no. I would have said like you can be more, you can do more, you can venture out, and you can still go around the world. I think I'd be all right with it now. I think I'd be like, yeah, there's a side to it that now you get that reflection time. It's been 2 years. I've had time to reflect, and at the time I was angry and bitter and stressed 2 years ago in 2023, and now I'm on a different side. So I think if they came up and asked me, I think I'd be like, okay. Either way, if they said they weren't, nah, not interested, then fine. But if they told me, I'd also be supportive and say, good, maybe you're joining when there's going to be no wars on. So that'd be
So
better if
if
I joined different. So
would you do it again yourself? If it was you at 17 and you had the choice knowing that, what these 15 years were like, would you do it again?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. The army gave me everything I've got today. I hated it when I left. I hated the army. I hated everything about it because I'd been here for 15 years, and like I said, at that point, when you're feeling depressed and anxious all the time and stressed and didn't know what was going on with the bipolar, you need to blame something. I feel like sometimes it's just human of us to go, right, I need to find something to blame, and that was my vent. And now after 2 years of reflection, it's like, do you know what? I enjoyed it. I'd do it again. Some crap times, it's some great times, and the great times is probably the more times I remember now.
Yeah. Yeah.
As much as I
Um,
make my friends for still being in.
well, it's a different world for sure. So
Hmm.
I'd like to get into fatherhood a little bit. And
Yeah,
I'd
of
like
course.
to there's a couple of parts of it because I'm sure there's some components of raising a family in the military that's probably a world in and of itself. But like stepping it back a little bit, the whole understanding about fatherhood and the hormonal changes and the brain changes that men go through, which I
Hmm.
had never heard before. I've heard about it in the last few months, but I really didn't know about it. And I thought for a young man who, because the hormonal changes are very different than a woman, the woman starts to have the hormonal changes through pregnancy. For the father, it's when he connects when the baby is actually born.
Hmm.
And that as long as he's actively involved in parenting, his testosterone levels go down by about 30%.
Yeah.
And so that kind of changes everything. But if you don't know that's what's happening, but you have these, all of a sudden, you have more nurturing feelings, less aggressive, the natural aggression that comes with high testosterone. Like, if I wonder in your work, do you find that, when some young men especially come in first experiencing fatherhood, they're going through some mental turmoil because they just don't have the facts? When I was raising my son, I longed for a guide, something real, honest, and grounded in what boys truly need. So I created the book that I wish I'd had. Packed with tools and real world strategies that actually work, you'll learn how to nurture his emotional world and finally understand the feelings behind his behavior. Because boys don't need punishment, they need guidance. We'll bust the myths that keep boys boxed in and help you support him through the real challenges of growing up. Most of all, it's about transforming your connection, one small moment at a time. Raising boys who become remarkable men. Get your copy today, and let's create a beautiful future together.
Yeah, you're definitely onto something. There's quite a few of my clients that they start speaking to me sometimes as their wife is pregnant or their
Yeah.
girlfriend is pregnant. So they start, I think it's because of the typical worry and because they see stress relief coach for dads, they're like, "Oh, I'm going
Yeah.
to be a dad and I'm already stressed." So I do talk to them a lot, and it's such a quick change, like their attitude towards everything, like depending on what they're talking about. And we do talk about that. Not so much about the testosterone drop in, but how they're sort of, as you said, how their hormones change, and that shocks them every time. By the way, as you
Hmm.
said, like it shocked me. I was shocked, and I only learned it 8, 9 months ago,
Yeah.
just doing a course, and I was like, oh, who knew that? And it really helped me as in coaching as well, because when I explain to them, sometimes it's like that home run. You talk to them, and they go, oh. But what I find it helps them with, predominantly, is how they shift focus, and it's something we work on for those type of clients that I have, and they do actually find it helps because most of the time, and I'm just talking on a average basis, most of the time the woman will be on maternity leave
Hmm.
at this point. So and in fact, all of my clients go through this situation. I haven't got one client who's the man is staying at home. So I just tell them like little tiny things is that when you go into the house, focus on your wife straight away or your girlfriend. That is where your hormones sit as well. It's the protective sort of feeling, the testosterone going, your natural aggression has gone down because you're not trying to provide sort of flaunt, if you like, for any sort of mate or possible mate. You don't need
Yeah.
to, and it has worked for them when they focus a little bit more on the wife and help them and guide them and just be there. Even if it's just coming home and then the wife gives you the baby just as any time. Just I find that, and I love doing it for my wife. I love my son sees it a lot. My daughter more than anybody sees it a lot, and she's only 11 years old, bless her, and she mentions it all the time because since I learned it, and I wish I knew it when my son was one or when my daughter was 4 or 5, because I'll walk in the door and my kids will be like, "Daddy, Daddy," and I'll go straight to my wife if she's there, and I'll say, "Hello, darling, how was your day? Have the kids been good for you? Good, happy day," and then I'll go to the kids. And I think that's so important with our hormonal changes. It helps our mental resilience because you've got that partner there. And a lot of the time, when you're helping your wife, you're relieving a lot of releasing a lot of oxytocin. And then when you go to your kids and you have that laugh, you're releasing a lot of oxytocin. So just men just need to understand at the very beginning, your body is becoming protective and providing, and that sort of atmospherics. It's because you need to look after. I wish I did it. I don't think I did it enough, and I think that's why my marriage was quite rocky before a couple of years ago because I probably didn't turn my focus onto my wife, and I was like trying to go. I need to be with the kid. I love her so much, but I also need to work really hard, and I haven't spoke to my wife, and now she's miserable at me, and I just found that works the best, and I think I haven't had any sort of negative comments back on that from men that have tried it within the stress relief of the dad rebuilder, where they've gone, okay, I'm going to spend some more time with my wife. They routine it, and it's worked out a lot better for them because they can just feel calm when you support the wife who's looking after the child a lot or the girlfriend, whatever it may be, they're more resilient with it as well because they know that you've got their back. And I just think it's that circle of trust and yeah, that's my say. So I waffled on there a bit, but it's just because
Oh,
I'm
no,
very
that's
passionate
good.
about it.
Well, sometimes when you're talking about lower testosterone, sometimes that's painted very negatively in male culture, and it's a little bit threatening. And it's kind of like you feel like you're losing your edge, like you're not the man that you were before, like because it's changing inside you. How do you reframe that? Like, I think it's really important that men understand that this is a natural biological, historical adaptation that is you know a beautiful way of becoming a family. But how do you help men understanding they're not losing the edge. They're just this is part of their, biological development to help them be better fathers.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right as well. It's what our body requires to become that father. And I say most of the time we reframe it in a way is like if you want to use the phrase that losing your edge, in fact, actually, you're doing quite the opposite because the way your hormones are shifting are making you a better person because in a way you might look at it and go, I'm losing my loss of testosterone. What if I want, am I losing my manlyhood? Or I'm losing the
Mhm.
sort of rigorous feeling to go to the gym, whatever it is. But I say no, the opposite should be happening. Because you've lost testosterone means your aggression isn't there. It's your natural aggression towards everything, your natural aggression towards anger and stuff. But it does let you become more grounded and patient. And patience is huge in the stress game. It's all about keeping calm, focus, and like you mentioned a few minutes ago about your son in that chaos sort of feeling at the moment. It's all about patience. We have to be patient as dads.
Yeah.
You've got a lot going on, and like I said, I'll go back to it. You need to be supportive for your wife and your kids. So, no, we just reframe it in the way is that it's not a loss. You're not losing your edge. You're building yourself into a better man. And it doesn't go down well. It's quite a controversial topic along my niche, if you want to call it that, because a lot of men will go, well, just because you're a dad doesn't make you more of a man. I was like, I'm not saying it does, but it's a difficult one. I will openly say I think men that are wanting to be fathers, love their children, love their wife, I do feel like it makes them slightly better men, to be honest. And it goes down quite controversial, and people don't like it. Like I know there's men out there that doesn't have that choice, and I understand that. And it's you know, and I'm not saying better men as in that they're going to do better things in their life, but I just think hormonally it makes you more grounded, more patient, more calm. I just said I think on average, dads that want to be dad and are there just makes them become better in themselves.
Yeah, I think
Less mental health
you
in
could,
dads.
yeah, I think you could almost say better humans. Like you could say
Yeah.
men, but almost better humans. Um, So part of that is connected with chronic stress because when you have chronic stress, then you don't have the oxytocin and your brain is in a
Mm.
constant state of flight or fight and that doesn't help you to be able to tap into those great things that are happening in your body with the change in hormones. So like looking back at that, I wanted to ask you a little about the stress that was in your life. Like there must have been a fair bit of stress for you to end up with a pacemaker. How did that all come about?
Yeah, I go back to the just looking after everyone else and not myself and forgetting. I've heard it so many times since I started coaching as well, filling your own cups you can fill others, that sort of analogy.
Yeah.
Chronic stress, it's sneaky. I always say that sometimes stress is in some of my sessions, some that I call it the gateway drug to mental health, because stress just can build. And like you mentioned, when you get to chronic stress where your cortisol levels are always high, your blood pressure, your heart rate's heightened, your arteries are restricted, everything's just happening in your body is wrong. And what I realized, and I knew then, that now I look back at it, so I didn't know then, by the way, but when I back on it, my sleep was poor. I was on my phone, I was thinking about stuff, I was doing stuff which my cortisol would have stayed high, which means my body's telling me it's not time to sleep yet. And then another thing I didn't do is then my mornings were rushed all the time because I just got up and got on with the day because I knew, oh, chaos, chaos, chaos and stuff. And it just built and built. And I used to use the analogy when I was speaking to some clients, or when I was doing some group sessions before, is I always found that I've got an imaginary bag, men and women, mums and dads, we have imaginary bags on our back, and stress are bricks. You put a brick every day in your bag. It could be work, could be finance, anything, social media these days, all that sort of stuff. But just sometimes you just need to take a brick out and just be like, that doesn't need to bother me right now. Because if you keep on building it, eventually your legs are going to give away, or you won't be able to actually carry that burden with you. And that's when you break your back, and that's mental health. And that's what it went to me, is the mental health. I feel like, yes, we can talk about trauma, yes, we can talk about bipolar, etc., but let's face it, stress was the knife in the back that really just pushed me over the edge. So I just didn't know how to say no to things. I just wanted to make everyone else happy. As I said, my empathy built, my own personal self growth just went down, and I didn't look after myself at all. Alcohol, smoking, less going to the gym, more looking after people, trying to be always present with my kids, but actually not taking any time for myself. So I just got to a point where I was lost. And to be fair, most of 2023, I don't think I can actually remember that much, to be honest. I think it's a bit of a blur. I remember bits, highlights, but it's not much there in my mind now.
Well, stress definitely is a killer. Like that's, I think it's the root of
Mm,
almost all ailments, all mental health, all physical health.
mm,
Like I'd go that far because I think it's that powerful what it does to you. You
thank you.
also wrote that you have been in dark places and you survived two suicide attempts. So I looked at some
Hmm.
stats and it said in 2023, the suicide rate for males in England and Wales was at the highest level since 1999.
Yeah.
75% of suicides
Hmm.
involve men. And in the
Yeah.
UK and Wales in 2023, there were 4,506 male deaths. So, what
Hmm.
was the turning point for you? If you were at that darkest point where that was an option that you were seriously considered, what stopped you and helped you move forward? Like, what supports really were made a difference for you?
there's definitely fewer mentioned. I wanted to say something about that stat that you mentioned, that the 75%. I found at the time when I look back and I speak to a lot of men in the men's mental health world and some psychologists and therapists that I've worked with as well. We always talk about the left, the right, not politically, sorry, but just the left path, the right path, or the center path. And if you go down the left road, then it could be, oh, yeah, you're not man enough, you need to be more manly. But then if you go down the right road, you're being told, oh, you're not strong enough. Sorry, you're overly toxic, you're overly masculine, stop being too much of a man. So you've only then got down the center road, and sometimes that is the darkest of roads, and that's where I think it led for me. So I was just like, I can't be open and honest about myself because I don't want to show any weakness. But then if I go down the other road, then I'm going to be told that, oh, you're just being so toxic and just the way you are. So I was just lost, right? So there was the day that I attempted the look back now, it's crazy, but was first of all my kids, because I also had this, how could I do that to them scenario
How
going
old
through,
were
even though I
you?
actually went through 31
Okay.
2 years ago, 31.
Okay.
So I was actually looking at my son's bedroom at the time. That sort of stopped me. And then my wife was the second one, because after, I think she got home on one of the days and I was sat in I had like a breakdown basically in Tesco, UK supermarket. And I think I threw up. I can't really fully remember. It was an absolute blank. I was just, everything was gone. I was pale, shaking. And I got back. She got back one day with my arms are pouring out of blood, and I just remember sitting there. I can't remember the whole night, but she had to explain to me. She said I was just sat there and I was staring out the window like someone's coming into our house. I'm telling you, I was adamant that someone was coming to get us. I don't know why. So she called the hotline, and then I met a guy called Michael, and he said something that I needed to hear, which was, he wasn't soft in any approach. He was very down the line, very direct, and he said, "You will die in a ditch if you don't listen to me." And I was like, "What?" And it was the first time someone sort of like put that cold smack to the face of like something bad's gonna happen, and that's where it saved my life. So I, my wife is amazing. She's Eastern European, and she's yeah. I don't think if I think of it, I don't think a lot of women may have done what she's done. I think because she generally in what I mean in Britain, I think that she's very different, and she wouldn't leave me, and she would hold me by my side, and I generally believe that she saved my life. That's what
Is
I
this
believe.
before you had the pacemaker?
After I had the
After?
pacemaker in 2022, September 2022, yeah, and then this was in 2023 two times. This was outside the army.
When did you get diagnosed with bipolar? Because that sometimes is a contributing factor to deep depression.
That was in November 2023. So
Okay.
first attempt was September, just before my birthday, and then the next one was early 2024, very early 2024, as in like, I think just after New Year's. My nan and granddad died in the same week. My nan pretty much brought me up from birth, pretty much, whilst my dad was working and stuff. So yeah, that crushed me a bit more. So again, all this extra stress really just, and I just couldn't tell him. I just didn't want to burden my wife at the same time. I remember telling her everything because Michael made me. He said, "You got to tell her everything." So, and we just drove back in silence. And then when we got back, she just put her arms around me and went, "How have you held that in for that long? That is unreal. She can't hold that in for 10 minutes." She said, "To hold it in for that long," she said, "is unbelievable." So,
Well,
yeah.
that's the really, really sad part of this whole discussion about masculinity. Like it's there are too many men, too many young men who don't
Mm,
feel that they can let it out and that they will have that, you know, beautiful person to wrap their arms around you and not think less of you because you are sharing it. And
mm.
that's why I think whatever your work is in helping males, like I think it's like critical work. That's why I do what I do. Like mine's at a different end. Like I tried to get them when
Mm,
they're really young, like
yeah.
growing up, but it's the same thing. Like there's men are dealing with so much that's not talked about, that there's not an awareness, and it's just
Mm.
it can have such tragic results in the end. So,
Yeah, what
so
is weird about what? Oh, sorry.
no,
Go
no,
on, please.
please go ahead.
I was just going to add on to what you were saying then, but most of my clients, if not all of my clients, when I've asked that why haven't they reached out before now and why haven't they spoke, is that they just felt that they just wouldn't get any love back, and in return they feel like if they did reach out, and it's something I'm still working out, to be honest, because I wouldn't be able to give you a definitive answer on why that is, because I'm talking to dads. Most of my clients have got a family, they've got a wife. Some of them have got a loving mother that's in their life, and I'm still like, why haven't you spoke to anyone? Why haven't you vented? And it's not me, shining the torch in their face. It's not like, oh, why haven't you done this? It's like, hey man, I've been there. Like, why? What's your reason? Like, because mine was always, I just felt like if I did it, she might leave or something like that. That's what I generally thought. And I hear that sometimes as well. It's like I just didn't want her to leave me, or because she thought I was weak, or I didn't want her to leave me because she thought, oh, I'm not going to be able to provide and to love them and show them care anymore because they think, I don't know, it's crazy, but
But that's what happens, and that's what starts
mm,
when when the little guy is 3 years old and falls down and cries, and he's told not to cry. He chooses to push that down because he doesn't want to lose the connection with the people he loves the
mm,
most. So if you,
yeah,
add on another, 20, 30 years of the same kind of experiences where, you're basically put in a box, and if you go outside of the box, you risk losing
mm,
what's really important to you. So that's a lot to deal with. What would
yeah.
be your definition if you were, explaining to your boys, for example? What is the definition of healthy masculinity?
For me, healthy masculinity is somebody that is loving, compassionate. And by compassionate, I mean just I love being a man in that sense. I'm so interested in things. I love getting into it and excited and that sort of stuff. So compassionate as about something, and really loving it and putting your compassion on your family. Somebody who's a great leader as well. I think that's fine. It's knowing when to lead, knowing to take a step and go, someone else take the lead. So being a really good leader in itself. I think in its sense as well, for me, masculinity is wanting to provide. Now, provide doesn't always have to mean financial, because people get really scared about that and such, be like, oh, providing. It could just be providing something, whatever it may be. So it might be
Yeah.
providing security, it might be, and then that protective side as well. But I think protective in a good, healthy manner. So I don't see masculinity as toxic. I just see that people can be toxic, and
Yeah.
you can be extreme in your masculinity, you could be extreme in your femininity, and it depends on which side barrier you're on. But for me, a lot of masculinity for men is, like most this is this is the crazy world that we live in as well. But most men I know, I wouldn't say they're toxic masculine. I think
No.
they love their kids, they love their family, they're providing. They don't listen a lot of the times. It's something that we get stuck with. But I think in a way that masculinity is quite beautiful, and as long as you're not aggressive in its way, and I think if men could have help to show love, and that's, I think it's sometimes like it's putting a door on it, and just closing in some of that, and like you mentioned, but testosterone drops by 30%. Sometimes that's the key to the answer. And I know there's some bad men out there that do some bad things to families, and I wish I could understand the evil behind it. But it's made me a better person by a millionfold, and that's only when I realize, oh, that's my most important thing in the world, my family, not my job, not my
Yeah.
military career, my family. And when that happened, just everything started to really just like a Lego set, it started to build on each other until everything was in place. So I just want men to know that masculine is not a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing. You can be compassionate, loving, you can be a really good leader, lead your kids, show them love. I think, my kids love me to bits. That's something I know. I can feel it. I can feel the love. So Yeah, and that was through masculine traits. That was.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of things that you're saying. It's interesting. As I've been having more conversations with young men and young dads, one of the things I have realized that, it's kind of said that, men don't talk about their emotions, they don't have that same empathy and compassion and part of me thinks it's because they haven't been given the opportunity to have conversations, to share some of the things in safe spaces where they're not worried about, being vulnerable or, being shamed for what they're doing. And when they have an environment like in your business, when they have an environment where they're not being judged, they're accepted, and that there is space to talk about these things, I've been finding that so many of the men have so much to say, and but they all just kind of say, well, no one's ever asked me that before. No one's ever had
Mm,
this conversation with me before. So I think it's really exciting that there are more men reaching out to people like you, and that there are more um, like your YouTube, that there are men just, getting together and being men together, talking about things that are real and supporting each other. And I think that's a very optimistic direction that it's a lot of work still to do, but it's going in a good direction.
yeah, yeah, agreed.
But I want to get into something else that you had mentioned. You had said that one of the biggest challenges that boys face today is being raised on social media. So
Mm.
there's lots of things in that conversation, but what worries you the most about that? And what do you see in your own family?
I think in my own family, I'm not too worried because we spend probably more time together, and that's really where kids thrive is with the family and then with their friends and stuff. So even though yes, they see social media, they're not fully, like oh, social media is everything. So I'm not too worried about them. Although there is worries, of course. I think the problem is with social media that I call it like the spider web, and that we're in the middle and we're stuck on the spider web, and all of the different webs that are coming down are just different bits of information. And sometimes it just gets so saturated, like you could literally scroll, especially since the dawn of TikTok and COVID, where people can just scroll and get like 10 different types of videos. It causes a lot more stress. But within young boys, 1 minute they're seeing like you've got to be like this, you've got to be like this big hench guy, and the next minute it's going, you're disgusting because of the way you are, and they hear it all the time, and a lot of male co-workers in my previous jobs when I was actually starting off as a leadership coach and then started thinking about stress coaching. A lot of them were saying the same thing, that the boys are watching this social media and being told they're hated because of being masculine or something, and then the next minute they're being told you need to be more masculine, you need to be more aggressive, and so they're like, oh, hold on, what do I actually got to do? So I think that we all know about fake news, and I just think sometimes when people are behind a keyboard, they could put anything on social media, and there's nothing stopping them. And I don't mean, I'm not saying take away freedom of speech and stuff, but what I'm saying is if we've come into the dawn of I'm going to read social media, that's true, that's true, that's true, instead of thinking and being a bit more skeptical about it. And I think my worry is that a lot of, and it's not just about young boys, because I think adults fall folly to this as well, but for young boys growing up on social media as their educational how I'm going to be a man, when you get, I remember probably one of the most memorable things was a group thing I did in July 2024. And I was just writing my book. And I asked him, and funny enough, he was 16 going on 17. And I said, like, who do you follow? And he was talking about, and then he said about this woman that he follows on social media, and he said how to be a dad and how it's going to feel being a dad. And I said, right. And then he showed me this person. I was like, why are you listening to that? Is she a dad? Is she even a mum? No, she's an 18-year-old girl telling you how to be a dad. And I said, it just worries me that like as long as it's on social media, if they've got the big follow account, they'll go, oh, they've got authority then. They must know what they're talking about because they've got 1.2 million views. And she's 18 and she's definitely not a mum and she's definitely not a dad. So why are you listening to it? So I guess it's my worry that social media now it's about likes, follows, and views, and they might look at it and think, well, they must be talking sense because they've got millions of views. When actually, it's the quieter among us who are saying this is reality because I think social media has taken reality away now. And like, if I, had to, I guess if I had to pose a question, how many times you look at social media and you could walk down the street wherever you live and you actually see that happen? So I just say, sometimes you're looking at social media, it's not reality. It's like living in virtual reality. So just grow up and, listen and love the community around you, listen to your parents, you know, socialize, read books. I wish we'd go back to reading books a little bit, just a little bit. My son, he's 6 years old and he reads a book 3 times a week at the night.
Yeah.
We'll read together. My daughter reads books, and it's great because I'm not saying you can't have fake news in books, but what I'm saying is that we usually read older books. The idea of those books wasn't to try and push an identity down you. It was just like, here's a book on some information. You go, oh, I'm going to read about it then. Where I think social media now, it's made the algorithm I know is created to make you want to watch, and it usually goes off emotion. So that could make you with endorphins, it could be dopamine, it could be aggression. And for boys, what do they show more than anything? Aggression. So they're going to aim aggression at you with political arguments or whatever it may be. So I just a bit worried about that for young boys.
So what do you think is the one big conversation? Like there should be lots of conversations, but what's the one conversation that parents, especially of boys, should be
Mm.
having with their sons?
I think it definitely needs to be to teach them that social media, we need to all remember, is a luxury. It's not life, it's not food, it's not water, it's a luxury. And it's like playing games or it's like doing something. Going on social media should not be anyone's life. It should not be you just need to scroll and you need to go in there and learn. We've got some great things about social media. You can talk to family members across the world, but at the end of the day, it is a luxury. So please enjoy life, enjoy the world that you've got around you. Like there is a world out there, and you're looking at your on your phone, and you're listening to millions of people tell you that you're right, you're wrong, you're great, you're horrible. Who cares? Just you've got your family around you, and I wish boys, and I think for boys, I know it's the same for girls as well, but as we are discussing boys, just social media fine, go on it. I'm not going to stop anybody. I'm never going to stop my son. Like, no, no social media for you. Like I'm going to let him still grow up in the world, of course. But there's so much more to life, and social media is not it. I'm
Mm.
not trying to be old fashioned to be like, go back to books, everybody. But it's just, I feel like social media is a bit too much for our human brains to handle sometimes,
Well,
and
and
especially as a young boy.
there's not enough there's not enough regulation as far as, especially for young children, like what they're exposed to without, sometimes just by mistake they come onto things that they shouldn't. There's not enough regulation. There's not enough data to say what the
Mm,
effect this is having on their development mentally, emotionally, socially, and so I think there's
yeah.
there's caution. And I think that there are conversations that need to be had. I think some parents, especially older parents, who they didn't grow up with it themselves, that they, don't maybe have those conversations to emphasize that there's just something to be cautious about, like to be
Mm.
to be aware of.
Yeah, I have, so my son's 6, my daughter's 11, so they have I've set up on their phone certain parameters, so they can't go on certain websites, they can't type in certain keywords. And so I think I was talking about this, and again it was on a previous podcast, and they said, would that become across as too controlling? Then I went, I don't care, because it might be seen as too controlling, but we do have to control our kids to a point. I just don't know where we got to this point of the world where parents have like lost control. Like, oh, that's a bit
Yeah.
controlling, that, isn't it? Well, yeah. If I wouldn't let my son into a tattoo shop at the age of 6 and like
Yeah.
start thinking about getting a tattoo. We have to have limitations, and social media for me is one of them.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember the story of there was a video of a girl that had a pale face, and it was like a really scary image of girl. It was causing kids nightmares and stuff. And what they were doing is putting it on like Peppa Pig videos and stuff, so they'd watch to the end. I mean,
Oh,
that's quite scary to think, isn't it? Like that's just
yes.
Peppa Pig videos and
Yeah.
your Paw Patrols and stuff that your kids are watching, and then people would just put it at
Yeah.
the end. So parents would never have guessed it would be at the end of that. So we do have to be very careful. You're absolutely right, and I think, and I say this to a lot of dads and some mums that I've worked with, and I've said, but the buck stops with you.
Mm.
As much
Yeah.
as we can't control what the government does and we can't control what the world
Yeah.
does, but you can definitely control what happens in your house. And my son
Absolutely.
doesn't really care as much. My daughter's
Yeah.
grown up to 11 now, and do you know what the difference is? I sat down and explained why I'm doing it. It's
Yeah.
not right, no social media for you. You're only 11, and walked off. It was right,
Yeah.
sit down. These are the reasons why, and I'll even give them some coaching tips, even why I'm doing that. And my daughter's fully behind it. She's like, yeah, absolutely agree.
Actually, I think that's a very important part of parenting. And
Hmm.
and I can tell you, like from now having an adult child, um, it still leads to great conversations because something will come up, maybe politically, maybe, social media wise, and it might be something that perhaps we might be conflicted about or have different opinions, and both of us will kind of do our due diligence and try to figure things out, and then come and have a conversation. And it's kind of this is what I learned, and this is why I think this. What did you learn? Am I missing something? So I think from a very young age, you explain why you're doing what you're doing, even before they're able to contribute much to the conversation. But I think it's
Yeah, absolutely.
important. Craig, tell me a
Absolutely.
little bit about the book that you wrote.
So the first book I wrote was how I went from stress and hospital beds to it was going to be leader because, like I said, I started off the coach, but it's going through stress proof dad. It was because at that point I was reflecting anyway on, as you mentioned earlier, like what got you to that point, and now I reflect back and look at why I was so stressed. So it was number one to write it all out and just bleh, all over a page to help
Yeah.
me. And I was inspired by it because I thought, do you know what? Even if one person reads it, I thought they'll be able to. I call it matrix my story, where they'll go, okay, I wasn't in the military, I didn't end up in hospital, I haven't got a pacemaker, my name's not Craig Maddern, but they can read the story and go, yeah, that's sort of like me. And then at the end, I decided, as I was about to finalize the book, instead of just giving them, here's my story, at the end of each chapter, I thought, what would have been perfect for me back then was to relate to another man and go, oh, yeah, I've been through that. Oh, yeah, I do that. Yeah, my wife did that. My kids are like that. And then at the end of each chapter is like, this is what I did to overcome that sort of stuff. So that's what really
Oh,
inspired me, and
beautiful.
I got really excited about it because, and I think why it did as well as it did was because even if you didn't want to read the whole entire story about me, there was some really helpful tips in there anyway.
Yeah.
And I wanted to start before Afghan, but I'm actually currently writing another book at the moment. That was coming out in July, and then I got caught up on that, and I had to work on some other things that I'm building for men as well now. So it's going to be out at the end of the year for Christmas, which is how to be a dad, not a man with a kid.
Mm.
Just a bit of play on words, but no, it was just inspiration, but also at the same time to just get it out from my chest onto a bit of paper, and that's one of my biggest helpers at the moment. It's probably one of my most popular things on the Dad Rebuilder, where I help men, dads, is just writing down something because we're not great men at talking, but it's the
Yeah.
start. And it sometimes if you can write it down, you can
Yeah.
formulate it into words, and it's just the way I do it. After many months and years, really, of learning how to perfect using a man's hidden emotions, we'll call it, to
Yeah.
push out. So yeah, really enjoyed writing.
So if one of your children
Mm.
read the book someday, what do you hope they understand better about you that they wouldn't get just from normal everyday life with dad?
They already have, so that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, my eldest, should I say, my 18-year-old, so he's read it, and he even said it's helped him, so that was quite nice. But
Oh,
I just want them to read it just to be like, life is that way. Life is a roller coaster, regardless of gender, your race, religion, whatever it may be. Life is going to be some sort of roller coaster, and however you make it. But when you're at your lowest points, like Dad was, there is a way out. You've just got to try and find that way out. We're all going to have a lower point in our life. It may not be as low as others, or it might not be, or it might really go low, but you will come up again. I want my kids also to see me as human, which I'm sure they do anyway. And I also want my kids to see me as a role model and a leader at that. That you hit their dad didn't just go, oh, I made myself better. Oh, I actually
yeah.
went, oh, I've made myself better. I think I can help others do the same. So I want them to see that because I would love my kids to grow up. Anything, it could be anything, but I would love them to want to grow up and be, you know, make sure they're okay, but want to help others as well. Um, that'd be nice. It'd be a bonus onto how amazing they are already. So,
Well, I know as a parent, it's not easy. I wrote a book for my son as well, and it
okay.
was basically a book with all the things that I want him to remember when I'm not around anymore because
Mm,
I'm at a very different stage of life than you are. But I know because of doing that, how much courage it takes to show your vulnerability and your weaknesses. Because you know that your kids look at you, through eyes of a child, no matter how old they are.
mm,
And when you share, you know, more about your struggles, about your flaws, about all of that. It's important for them to hear it. And
mm,
that's a step a lot of people can't take. But I also just wanted to say, I know that takes a lot of courage. And so good
mm.
on you that you gave that to your children.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. But no, I do like what you said, like with the looking through the child's eyes and like even with my son, it's seeing my vulnerabilities when he says, Dad, are you ever scared? Well, of course I'm scared.
Mm.
But it's about the brave, you have to be scared. And because he talked about me being in the army and doing certain things. I think it was about a wasp. I think a wasp was flying around me, and I'm not too bothered about wasps. And he was like, "Oh no, it's a wasp." And he said, "But you weren't that scared." I said, "Well, I was worried it was going to sting me, but I was brave enough to, not like run away and scream, I guess, in that case. But I kept calm because, maybe I would have spooked it or something." And it's the same with my daughter. She's even actually said the words. She's very intelligent. My daughter is, and so is my boy, to be fair. But yeah, and she's even said, like she loves my life story that she remembers me being the drunk dad. And it's a shame that she had to live through that, and I will always regret that. That's a guarantee. But what I won't regret is this thing she's seeing now. And
Yeah.
I've always said to my kids, I say it to my eldest more than anybody, is like, you've seen me at rock bottom. Do you know why I was at rock bottom? It's because I was being lazy or doing this and I wasn't living my life to the fullest, and I was, and like teaching them life lessons. I think I do it every single day. More or less every single day, I will teach them some sort of life lesson that even if it's repeated and recycled, it's like, remember what I told you about this? So I'm not worried about my kids growing up. I
Do you
think they're
have
going to be quite strong.
is there a place that you do that kind of as a routine, a habit? Like, is it, around meals? It is at nighttime in the car? Like, do you have something that works for you?
It is mainly around meals,
Yeah.
admittedly. If I had to put a percentage on it, it would be higher, like 70% would be around the meals because it's just naturally there. Then we sit at the table after. But there is times where I'll generally be sat at the end of my bed or, I don't know, could be out in the garden with the dogs or whatever, and I will call my daughter to me because I've got something on my head. And because of my bipolar, sometimes it's like I need to get out, so I need to say it. So
Yeah.
bless them, they probably sometimes sit there and go, "Oh, Dad, here we go now, Jack and Nori, Jack and Nori." But I always ask them questions as well and make them give me answers. So it's like, what do you think about this? And ever since that's happened, I know that our relationship's like brilliant. My son follows everything I do. He wears the same clothes. He wants the same nicknames. Everything. And my daughter's a daddy's girl all the way through. I don't think she always says to my wife, bless her, she always goes, "You always walk past dad and hug him. What about me?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, I love you both the same. It's just, you know, dad." It's like it's a
Yeah.
normal thing, but no, we've definitely bonded because of it, and I love doing it. I love doing it. Maybe it's because I love teaching as well at the same time, so I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate to that one. What do you think is the most important thing for someone to take out of this conversation today?
Just just first of all, I think the first thing, in fact, yeah, this is the most important thing that you can think of in your head now. If you're a dad or mum, your family is number one because life will move on. You will get different jobs. You'll have different friends sometimes, and things will move. Life moves. But your kids are your kids forever,
Yeah.
and you will be their dad or you're the mum forever. So I only wish at an earlier period in my life that they were my not just saying it. Oh yeah, they're my number one, but acting like my wife, my kids, number one. That's it, of
Yeah.
course. And then me second, then work and stuff like that, right? But just please, I think we're living in a very different culture at the moment, a different time where family isn't as probably boastful and it's not out there as much at the moment. But I generally feel that society thrives with great families, great wives, great husbands, great kids. It's our future, it's our now, it's our past. Are all around family. So yeah, just identify yourself as a dad, identify yourself as a mum, because that's where I was lost for so long. When I lost my soldier badge, I was like, who am I now then? And when I was in the army and I was like, oh, I've moved job, who am I now then? Well, the whole time I was a dad. And that's where my identity lays. I am a dad. I'm a happy dad. I'm a happy husband. I would never trade this in for all money in the world. That is
Beautiful.
100%. So please look for it as well. For the young boys that are growing up, for a lot of hopefully a lot of your listeners that might be young boys listening in, look for it. There's going to be a woman out there that you'll deeply fall in love with. All this societal pressures that you got now. You've got to go out there with lots of different women and stuff like that. You don't need to. You just need to find the one, have kids, and get baby sick on you and stuff, and go through all the stress and whatnot. But you will love it, and it'll be the best thing you've ever done in your life, and you'll never regret having kids. I don't think I've ever met a dad yet who regrets having kids, or a mother
Yep.
yet who said, "Oh, I regret having them." Unless they're doing it in a joke, of course.
Well, I think it's a like it really is a gift. If you're lucky enough and privileged
Mm,
enough to bring another human being into the world, then that is your top job and your top priority, and you've
mm.
been given like the best gift there could be to receive. So, yeah. Listen, before we do finish, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had?
Um, no, not really. Like, I just want to re-emphasize that, for men out there that might be listening, or younger boys, like it's okay to be a man. You don't have to stress out about like being a man. Don't be so scared about society. Don't be so scared to stand up and say what you can provide is not a great thing. And like I said, just don't be fearful of having a family, because if you're worried about the world, I can guarantee you, if you've got a wife and kids, and for a woman as well, if she's got a husband and kids, you've already got that support network right there.
Yeah.
Your kids are little therapists. They'll help you through anything, and your wife is your partner, your everything. And yeah, so just please, like, don't see it as such a, oh no, I'd rather be a millionaire and go out and live the
Hmm.
world like that. This is the real richness and wealth of the world.
Well said. Where can listeners connect with you or learn more about your work?
Yeah, okay. So they can find me on Facebook. Feel free to reach out to me at any point, even if it's just questions. My at is Craig.Maddern. I'm on Instagram. I've got a website called CraigMaddernCoaching.com, and I'm just about to release the Calm Down Man Plan. Proud of the name, which is a shorter form of the Dad Rebuilder, where dads just haven't got that time for the 12 weeks or whatever. It's just something that they can do for very quickly, video content, and then they get a meeting with me, and it's just a bit more of a relaxed version of it. So that's coming out in September as well. So yeah.
Well, I'll make sure that all of that is in the show notes, and I would encourage any man who's listening to tune in. And there's nothing quite like having somebody to really talk about things who has gone through it and also who's learned more about it, like understanding different things,
Mm,
like, the hormonal and the brain development with fatherhood. Those things are really important to talk about. So I encourage
yeah, of
people
course.
to jump in with you. Thank you, Craig. I know how precious time is, and I hope that you feel I honored yours today. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you, and I'm sure that your story can really impact someone else's life. And thank you to our listeners for joining us on Unlocking the Parenting Code All About Boys. Be sure to check out Craig's links in the show notes, and don't forget to subscribe, share, and tune in next week for more conversations about boys and men. Thank you for sharing your time with me today. Every conversation we have here is a step toward raising boys who feel seen, heard, and deeply valued. If you're looking for more support on this journey, I invite you to visit me at sonhoodcoaching.com. You'll find a link in the show notes. And as always, thank you for being part of this important movement. Until next time, take good care.